Hello. What's up, you guys? Welcome to this week's episode of Don't Think. Just a minute, please. Oh, I have to crack my diet root beer before we can go any further. I think I just spilled that on my sweater. Not an ad. Not an ad. Just nothing's better than diet root beer. Okay. Let's get into it. Welcome back to Don't Think, the podcast for anyone who is desperately sick of themselves. I'm talking like your brain annoys you all day, every day, and you can't get a break from it. I actually opened Instagram this morning to somebody posting about my podcast episode that came out today, and their post was like, I'm super anxious, nothing new there, and excited to get a 27-minute long break from my own brain with the Don't Think podcast. And I was like, oh my God, we've done it. That's exactly what I want this show to be for you guys. Unfortunately, it's not that for me. Actually, you know what? It kind of is, though, because while I'm actually recording the podcast, I'm so focused, I'm so dialed in that I can't possibly spiral about anything else. So, you know what? It is a break. It's a break for all of us. On that note, what shall we overthink today? I'm sure you've all heard it by now. Vogue saying that having a boyfriend is embarrassing, which is actually great news for me as the face of chronically single women online. Actually, before we go any further into this episode, I do need to confess something, which is that I am seeing someone. What are the fucking chances? As soon as having a boyfriend becomes uncool, I'm like, I got one. I did it. Perfect timing. Great. But I do want to talk about this whole kind of notion or movement. I have a lot of really awesome call-ins from you guys at the end of the episode that we'll get to. And I even got some statistics. Okay, I did a little number crunching. So mathematical of me, women in STEM. But I got some stats based on the question that I asked this week, which was, are you happy or single or in a relationship? And I think you guys will actually be shocked by the numbers, which I broke down by what men said versus by what women said so that we can compare. But before all of that, let's talk a little bit about it, okay? Is it embarrassing? Is it not embarrassing? Should we all be single? Should we all just date each other, but one big collective relationship? What are we doing? Because to a degree, I do get it. Okay, not because I think that love is embarrassing, but sometimes the people that we choose to love, it that can be a little bit embarrassing. Anyone who has seen my social media, listened to my podcast, even just like breathed in my general direction at any point, would know that I'm absolutely no stranger to, at least in the past, knock on wood, picking the wrong people and paying the big fat fucking price, which is, you know, a lot of heartbreak and a lot of embarrassment. It is embarrassing when you do that. But as someone who's done that, the way that I see it, this movement away from centering men or centering relationships in general, it comes from a few different places. So first and foremost, I am reading this less as having a boyfriend is embarrassing and more being single is not embarrassing. Because historically, especially as women, there's been this like inherent social pressure to find a man and have a fairy tale, be swept off your feet and have the big wedding, wear the white dress, all of that, right? And doing so almost put like an asterisk by you as a chosen, successful, desired woman, right? And those of us who were single felt kind of, woe is me. I'm going to be the old cat lady. Why didn't I get chosen? I'm not lovable. We're obviously moving away from this narrative. Women are more empowered and more independent than ever. So do I think having a boyfriend is embarrassing? No. Having a boyfriend isn't embarrassing. Having a mediocre, careless, or abusive boyfriend is embarrassing. Having someone just to have someone is embarrassing. Watering down your life, watering down your personality because someone is not adding value, they're actually taking from you, is embarrassing. Actually, I hate the word embarrassing for all of this, if I'm being honest, because I actually think it's very normal and kind of human, and people make mistakes, and I don't think that shaming people by calling them embarrassing is actually helpful at all, because it is sort of biologically and evolutionarily, I had to practice that word, ingrained in us to want human connection. That's not embarrassing. That's completely human. I think even being desperate for it to the point where we choose the wrong people or we stay with the wrong people because we want that love and that connection so badly, even that's not embarrassing. Again, it's human. And for me personally, like, I don't love being single. I think that I do. Sometimes when I'm in a relationship, I'll think like, oh, I wish I was single. It'd be so much fun. I'd have so much freedom. But when I look back on the times in my life where I actually was single, 99% of that time, I'm not happy. I'm miserable. I'm either doing some desperate chase or roller coaster with the wrong guy, or I have no one at all that's a love interest. And for whatever reason, for me, when I don't have a love interest, I don't have somebody who is giving me that validation, I don't feel good about myself. And that's kind of sad and, dare I say, embarrassing to admit out loud, but it's just the truth. I don't have a super strong sense of self. When I'm with someone who loves me, I feel more grounded. I feel more safe. I feel like I'm real. Like having that built-in support system, when it is that, which with the wrong people it's not, but having that makes me happier. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But one thing that I did learn from my breakup last year, when I felt so incredibly lost and lonely, and a deep loneliness feeling, right? Like everyone in the world has somebody and I have nobody. That feeling, it makes you question your self-worth. It really does. And it kind of makes you think like, well, what's wrong with me? Am I unlovable? Will I ever find anyone? And all of the spirals, like all of the self-doubt. But because I was so lonely and sad and simultaneously so not in a place to be dating or to be looking for somebody, trying to meet somebody romantically, it forced me to look for love and connection in other places. And it forced me to remember that you can find that in platonic relationships. And no, it's not the same as a romantic partner, but you can ease your loneliness with a friend, a family member. And that's what I did for, a period of time. I really leaned on those relationships so hard, and it was healing. It filled that desire to connect and to feel seen, and it filled it in a really safe way, which was so important at the time. Because I think a lot of the time when we're longing for connection and we're lonely, but we're not healed or we're not ready necessarily, and we go out dating and we, get caught up in these situationships with the wrong people, it just does more damage. It does more damage than it does good. But I get it. I do, and I'm not judging. But if you're in a really lonely place, especially going into the holidays, I think it's so important to emphasize the nourishing and leaning into your existing safe platonic love that exists already in your life, in your friendships and with your family, instead of kind of like desperately chasing it from random people, which again, I'm not judging, not embarrassing, but it's not fulfilling, right? It's not healing. It's probably not going to get you any closer to the goalpost of, finding the relationship that you desire. But eventually though, from doing this, from leaning into those relationships and, having my focus be myself and my close friends and family, when I did meet somebody, despite the fact that I wasn't really looking, it felt different. And I didn't feel desperate to make something work that didn't really work, which is, I think, why people say you have to love yourself first, which I also hate, because I do think that like you can love yourself better when you're with somebody who actually meets your needs, makes you feel safe. Not being desperate though for partnership, it does make it easier to only allow people in your life who add to it. So speaking of adding to it, this is another conversation I keep seeing about relationships and balance. And I think it's another reason why Vogue has said that having a boyfriend is embarrassing or can be embarrassing, is because a lot of the time we see the dynamic in a relationship with a man and a woman, it's not balanced. So, for example, men contributing to day-to-day errands. And I see this talked about online all the time. Why women often have to do all the emotional labor in relationships, planning everything, organizing everything, household chores. If you give your man a grocery list and he goes to the store and he gets groceries and he thinks he's done this sort of big favor or big deed, right? He's contributing. But really, like, you had to come up with the meals. You had to give him the list of ingredients. You had to say, hey, do you mind going to the store, please? And then he, is fine, I'll go to the store reluctantly. Then he has to call you from the store 10 times because he doesn't know which aisle the thing is that you've put on the list, right? Like, that's a lot of emotional labor for a woman to still to carry. It's not really 50-50. And I thought about this the other day. If my man comes home and I've made dinner and I've cleaned the house head to toe, it's sparkling clean, he might not even notice that the house is clean. And, probably, oh, thanks for dinner, right? Let's role reverse. If I come home and he's cleaned the place head to toe, sparkling, dinner's on the table, like, I'd be thrilled, right? I'd be praising him for 3 days. And I think that's kind of the gap that women are identifying more and more, and just kind of questioning, why is it the norm? Now, of course, obviously this doesn't apply to every man or every relationship. It is a generalization and an example, but I'm seeing more and more this dynamic being recognized. And I think it's really awesome, actually, that it's being talked about, because it has to be identified to be improved. And again, that's why I think, like, shaming people, bashing on them, saying is embarrassing, or saying, men are useless, whatever. It's really not productive. Obviously, I will be the first to joke about a man not showing up properly in a relationship, whatever. But I think really when it comes down to having the serious conversations, like addressing it from a place of how can we learn to do better is actually a lot more useful. Now, I know some guys about to jump in and be like, well, women do the chores because we bring home the bacon. It's just, before anyone even gets a chance to say that, I hear this all the time. I see it commented on my TikTok videos when I, comment on anything to do with men or the relationship between men and women. People will be like, well, we bring home the bacon, or you just want our money. It's just, it's so ass backwards for so many reasons. But if you're in a partnership where you and your partner agree that traditional gender roles works for you, great, fantastic. I'm talking about when it's unspoken. And in most relationships in 2025, women work. In fact, that's the reason that we have independence, and this revolution is kind of happening because we are independent. We can provide for ourselves. I don't know any couples where the woman doesn't work at all. And maybe that's because I don't, live in a big city or whatever. I'm sure there are plenty of places where that's common. But personally, no. I think the norm is that, 2 people work, 2 people provide. And this is part of the reason that these conversations and this shift is taking place, because of that independence, because women have the choice to be alone, right? And so this is where I want to talk about a few statistics. These are not the statistics that I have for you, but these are just some facts that I found online. Okay, so let's talk facts. Are relationships even good for us? Men do benefit from traditional relationships more. And there are statistics and research that shows that married men live longer, they earn more, and they report a higher overall satisfaction in life. On the contrary, women who are married report more stress, they report more housework, and they report less freedom. Statistically, research shows that married heterosexual men are happier than single men. Research also shows that the same is not true for women. So the question is, who actually is happier in relationships? Well, lucky for you guys, I did some of my own research. Okay? I polled my audience. I crunched the numbers. Actually, my mom crunched the numbers. Shout out to the best assistant in the world, mommy. Who is happier single? 43% of men said that they're happier single. And for women, 44% said they're happier single. So pretty much the same. Who is happier in a relationship? 25% of men said they're happier in a relationship, and 25% of women said they're happier in a relationship. So exactly the same. And then, of course, there were a group of people who said it depends and both can be good, right? It's like there are varying factors. So that was 32% of men said it depends. 31% of women said it. Are you guys seeing this? It's like exactly the same for both men and women, which I find is really interesting because of this narrative that exists that women traditionally benefit more. And there is research and studies that do support that. This is from, for context, a pool of about 130 participants. And I did find this interesting. Some statistics genius is probably listening to this being like, this is completely flawed for reasons X, Y, and Z, but this is my audience. So I don't know, maybe people that follow me, there's some sort of additional variable factor, but it was interesting to see. And I also asked the question, why are you happier in a relationship if that's what you said? Or why are you happier single if that's what you said? And you guys did not only provide me answers, but you provided me some very telling answers. Obviously, it's a nuanced question, but these responses that I got were fantastic. So let's get into the don't think deep dive. Are you happier single or are you happier in a relationship, and why? Okay, let's hear from Amanda.
Hey, Carla. I am a mom of two who's been married to her high school sweetheart for 15 years. And I'm not going to lie, I dream about being single all the time, but not because I don't love my husband, but because I would just love a break and time where I'm not needed by anybody. Like daydreaming about sending the kids to dad's house for a weekend is heartbreaking, but also would give me so much time to do all the things that I can't do as a married mom. So it's funny, like I would never want to not be with my husband, but I also like just wish I could have single time to be me, you know?
I totally get that. I think it's one of those things where it's like the grass is always greener, because when I'm in a relationship, I feel, like I said, comfort, safety, obviously that companionship, the romantic benefits, you know, like there's so many things that are wonderful about being in a relationship when it's a good relationship. But at the same time, there is always that voice in the back of your head that, you know, misses some of the freedoms of being single. Now, I'm not married, I don't have children, so I can only imagine that it is, you know, astronomically emphasized, these feelings, when you're married and you have children and you have a whole family to support and take care of. And, you know, I say all the time, I don't know how anybody does it having children. Like, I feel like I have a full-time job taking care of myself, and then to add the lives of humans, small humans, to that, so overwhelming. But on the other hand, on the flip side, like when you're single and you see a person who has a family, you just think you're the luckiest person in the world, right? And not always, but I know for me, there's times that I can remember one instance where this was with one of my exes. We had gotten in a fight, and I think we were living together at the time, and he went and stayed at a hotel for a few days. And, you know, I really thought our relationship was over. I desperately didn't want it to be over. And I went to the grocery store to pick up a few things, whatever. And I just remember seeing a couple at the grocery store, and they're doing the mundane task of grocery shopping together, picking up whatever. And I'm just looking at them thinking, you two are the luckiest people in the world, and you don't even realize what you have. I'm at the grocery store alone. I just want what you have. I just want a partner in life, right? So it's so true that both can be wonderful and both can be challenging for different reasons. But I so appreciate your honesty, Amanda, because like I really think it's talked about more now than it has been historically, but a lot of people don't talk about the realities of the challenges of having a family and kids and being married. It's all like butterflies and rainbows, and this is the dream, and you too can achieve it. Just have to find your person. And it's like, yeah, but it's not all good, right? Everything has its pros and cons. Let's hear from Deborah.
I think genuinely, I came out of a 24-year relationship, and I didn't realize how unhappy I was for the last 5 years of it. Thankfully, we're still friends, and that's fine, but I lost myself a little bit. So for me, being single was a way to actually figure out who I was. So I'm 47, and that ability to actually, it sounds ridiculous and it sounds so cliche, but getting to know myself was actually really important. So I think that there's no right or wrong single or relationship, but you should only be in a relationship if it's genuinely adding something to your life. You don't need it to fill a hole or fill a gap. I've started seeing someone now, taking it very, very slowly. And unless he makes me happier than I am when I'm by myself, and unless he adds something, then I'll go back to being single, because I'd much rather do that than be unhappy just to be with someone.
Thanks, Deborah. Super enlightening from somebody who, you know, came out of a really long-term relationship. And I think that's the thing too, is that it can take being in an unhappy relationship and then being single to realize that, you know, you can be happy on your own, and you shouldn't give up your independence unless it's for somebody who adds value to your life. Now, that said, there are sacrifices you have to make in a relationship, even a healthy relationship with somebody who adds value to your life. There are still sacrifices. You still have to give certain things up, and you have to compromise, and you have to meet in the middle, and it's not going to be an easy walk in the park every single day. So I think that's another interesting conversation around like, how do you draw a line between someone is adding value? Yes, but I'm having to give up too much at the same time, right? Because sometimes it's very easy. It's very black and white. This person is making me miserable, or they're not treating me well. They're cheating, or they bring nothing to the table. Like, yeah, in those instances, it's very easy to know it's not right. Doesn't mean it's necessarily easy to walk away, but it's easy to know, right? You have a knowing. But there are cases where like you really don't know. I've been in relationships where I'm happier with the person than I am single, but there's still a voice in the back of my head that says like, this isn't right. This isn't the right fit. And do I want to go out there and start over and try again? Or do I just want to make this work? And I could do a whole fucking episode on that. And I probably will at some point, because it's a daunting question and feeling when you have that in the back of your head. Okay, let's hear from Brandon. Happy to get some male perspectives in here as well.
I am super happy single because I've never been with anybody but sometimes I still date and I meet somebody that I really want to be with forever, and they never want that back. Yeah. I'd rather be single. If I can't have that, I'm not going to settle for the one I don't want to be with.
That's totally fair, Brandon. I think that's a question too that comes up a lot for me when I think about like, do I even want to get married? Do I want to be with one person for the rest of my life? And those are very natural questions to ask yourself when you start seeing someone. Is this somebody that I see myself being with forever? I think in some instances, though, I would challenge you to ask yourself the question, does it matter? Because sometimes having a relationship with someone for a period of time where it makes you happy and it's what you want at the time, that can be wonderful. Even if it doesn't necessarily lead to getting married or having children with the person or being together forever. Again, it depends on your goals. If your goal is I want to be married, that's my biggest goal in life. I truly, look forward to a wedding and a marriage, then yeah, maybe that doesn't make sense for you. But, if you're open to the idea of having multiple beautiful relationships in your life, then maybe it doesn't matter as much. If you know what you want, which it sounds like you do, Brandon, and you don't want to waste anybody's time, then I really respect that too. Okay, let's hear from Avery.
Hello, my name is Avery. I am very much happier in a relationship. I have been with my wife for over 10 years, married for 5, and we are high school sweethearts, and she is incredible. She's my best friend. She has absolutely no anxiety. I have OCD, and she has helped me through so many hard times, and I am so lucky to have her. She can lay her head down and fall asleep in seconds. She's one of those people. So, but she is very helpful, and the relationship is very important to me. I work almost exclusively with people over the age of 60 doing what I do, and I will tell you that for a lot of the men out there, what I've noticed is that they benefit from these long-term relationships, like marriage and whatnot, because I feel like the stereotype is that women really are the ones that want to get married, and it's super important, and a lot of societal pressure is put on them. But all the single senior women that I'm around, and even the ones that are married, so I'm not even trying to just be specific to that, they have tight-knit friend groups, and they go on trips together, and they do community activities. While I don't see men doing that as much, and they rely more on their marriages or, those kind of long-term relationships. So it's really important for a lot of guys to be in those kind of relationships from a man's perspective.
Thanks for that, Avery. I think it's really interesting again. And, when you look at the research that's out there, not my personal research, but it does show that, married men typically tend to be happier. And I think that in a lot of cases, it is some of the things you spoke about. I think women tend to rely on friendships and their own social lives and activities more, where oftentimes men lean on the women to plan those kinds of things. And so it's interesting what you said about elderly people and what you notice with that, because I do think that there is a shift happening again. And that's kind of what this entire episode is about, how this movement is sort of taking place. And I do think that the more this is talked about, the more things should probably change in a positive direction. And again, it's something I'm seeing online that's trending more and more, like this, anti-fuckboy or reformed fuckboy kind of TikTok accounts, which I think are hilarious. There's one guy who was on Fuckboy Island who kind of made his social media about being a reformed fuckboy. Now he's engaged to an absolutely gorgeous social content creator, and they seem so happy. They're like the poster couple for a happy, balanced relationship. And I love seeing that online, because I think that men setting that example for other men, hey, look, it's not uncool to better yourself so that you can show up in a relationship as an equal partner. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing shameful about that. And it's not about let's hate on men, right? That is not what I want to do with this episode, with my content, podcast, platforms in general. Never that, truly. I do think it's more an opportunity for people to grow. And again, maybe really the question is, are you as an individual happier when you're single or in a relationship, and why? And maybe that's something for you as individuals, for us as individuals, all to think about. But I did think it was a hilarious Vogue article and raised a lot of interesting points. If you haven't read it, you should. But I wanted to talk about it because, I thought it was interesting. I thought it was cool. I thought it was cutesy, on brand, all of the above. But dare I say, we learned something today. I learned something today. But as always, thank you guys so much for the voice notes, the call-ins. I thought they were really fantastic. And let's keep this conversation going. Please feel free to send me a voice note on SpeakPipe if you want to add something to the conversation. If you have any questions for future episodes of the podcast, please, as always, like, follow, review, rate, send to a friend, share with your ex, whatever. Don't care. It's all good for me. But I love you guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. And until next week, don't think too much. But if you do, at least you're in good company. Bye.